Two men from two generations with two distinctive backgrounds. Senator John McCain.
It is because I owe America more than she has ever owed me that I am a candidate for President of the United States.
Senator Barack Obama.
There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America.
On the road to the White House, the choice. Now, reporting from Murrells Inlet, here's News Channel 15's Jim Heath.
Hi everybody, from Murrells Inlet, the VFW post, where Senator John McCain brought his presidential campaign before South Carolina's primary. It's places like these all across the country where McCain is hoping to have the strongest support. And it's also one of the sites of our many interviews this past year. From Greenville in January 2006 to Myrtle Beach and Florence, then even aboard the Straight Talk Express bus. Being from Arizona and having known John McCain since his first congressional campaign, I can tell you that his road to the Republican nomination has been deeply rooted in his military service. But many who knew McCain as a young man are the first to say that they find it almost unbelievable that he's this close to being Commander-in-Chief.
Duty, honor, country.
New Orleans, August 1988. To a crowd that includes the Gipper, Senator John McCain delivers his first major speech in the national political spotlight. A rising star in Republican politics, McCain will return to a similar convention 8 years later to place into nomination his friend Bob Dole.
The greatest honor our party is empowered to grant, our nomination for the President of the United States.
I'm telling you, I've had the richest, fullest life of anybody I know.
The praise for McCain at that 1996 Republican convention even included network anchors.
Warrior, leader, and to many heroes.
This is one of the toughest little guys that anyone has ever met.
Tough, a word used often to describe Arizona's senior senator. John McCain was born into a military family in 1936. His grandfather and father were the first father-son team to reach the rank of four-star admiral. McCain was born in the Panama Canal Zone, and 70 years later, some legal scholars continue to debate whether that makes him a naturalized citizen, a requirement for the presidency. Under the watchful eye of his military family, McCain grew up a bit of a rebel. At Episcopal High, a private school in Virginia, McCain was given the nickname McNasty by classmates. One friend said he was no bully, but he took no guff. By the time he left for the Naval Academy in 1954, McCain regularly drank, gambled, and broke curfew to chase girls. At the Academy, McCain struggled to live up to expectations, and his wild behavior earned him the nickname John Wayne McCain. He hated being ordered around, and as a result was a member of the infamous Century Club, students with more than 100 demerits. In fact, McCain's yearbook calls him a party man with quick wit and clever sarcasm. McCain now admits he broke about every rule. At one point during training, he flew too low and knocked out power lines in Spain, and he teetered on the edge of expulsion.
Do you ever think to yourself, of 300 million Americans, I'm among just a handful that very likely could occupy the Oval Office?
Remember, I'm the guy that stood fifth from the bottom of his class at the Naval Academy. Of course, I'm honored and humbled.
After graduation, McCain was stationed in Florida. And in 1964, he met an attractive model, Carol Shep. A year later, they married. McCain adopted Shep's two sons from a previous marriage, and in 1966, Sidney McCain was born. It was just a year later when bomber pilot McCain was sent to Vietnam, and Carol and her family would not see him for the next 6 years. On July 29, 1967, McCain was strapped in his jet, waiting to take off from the USS Forrestal. The Forrestal was in the Tonkin Gulf, and McCain was about to embark on his 6th bombing run. Across from him, an F-4 Phantom was also revving up. Somehow, one of its missiles accidentally triggered, firing at McCain across the deck and into his fuel tank. The impact spilled 200 gallons of fuel that caught fire, leaving McCain to leap 10 feet from his jet just seconds before the first explosion. That explosion knocked McCain back 10 feet. He was lucky. One pilot was killed instantly. Another was decapitated. Several others were burned beyond recognition. As the explosions continued, 134 men died on board the Forrestal that day, and McCain thought he had lived through the worst experience of his life. But on October 26th, less than 3 months later, McCain started his 23rd bombing run over Hanoi. The event would be reenacted 30 years later in a motion picture based on McCain's book, Faith of My Fathers. After McCain reached his target and dropped his bombs, the instrument panel in his jet lit up. Seconds later, a missile shredded the right wing, and the jet was out of control. McCain ejected and was knocked unconscious. He landed in a lake. Both arms were broken, along with his right leg. He managed to inflate his life preserver, and he bobbed to the surface. And the mob of North Vietnamese who had gathered at the spot were angry for revenge. Hours later, after learning his father was an admiral, McCain was given the dubious nickname the Crown Prince. At the hospital, a French news crew was allowed to interview McCain, his right arm wrapped in a cast after a doctor failed to set the broken bones properly.
I would just like to tell my wife I don't get well. I love her.
To this day, McCain is still not able to fully raise his arms and often has a staff member help with his hair. After 6 weeks in the hospital, McCain was taken to a prison camp, left alone for 2 years in a 10-by-10 cell. In June 1968, McCain was told by his captors he could step into the front of the POW line and go home. After thinking about it, McCain said no. And a year and a half later, he would be moved to the infamous Hanoi Hilton, where his weight would drop to 105 pounds. In March 1973, 5 years since first being taken prisoner, McCain was released. As he stepped off the plane at Clark Air Force Base, McCain knew he was 5 years behind the world. On the home front, his wife Carol had been in a disfiguring car accident, and his daughter Sydney didn't remember him. McCain admits he resorted to his youthful ways, admitting to several affairs leading to a divorce.
McCain's life had certainly changed dramatically since Vietnam, and one of those changes was when he met his future wife Cindy while he was on a trip to Hawaii in 1979. They were married just a year later. And nearly 3 decades after that, McCain still tells me that Cindy remains his secret weapon.
The only problem that it poses for me is that so many people say, why isn't she the candidate?
Back at home, settling in with his new wife, McCain reached a decision to leave the Navy.
I just thought it was time to leave. My physical, I was unable to remain on flying status, and that had a big effect, but I think I had a pretty bright future in the Navy.
In 1982, a congressional seat opened up in Cindy's home state of Arizona. McCain relocated there and announced his candidacy. And a surprise result that shocked about everyone, McCain won. In his first interview as Congressman-elect, McCain named the issue he thought would be his biggest challenge.
Vote on Social Security. Okay. That is going to be the toughest thing, maybe, of however short or long a time I may be there.
3 years later, the icon of the modern conservative movement, Barry Goldwater, announced he would not seek re-election to the Senate. Immediately, John McCain was a front-runner to take his place. For months, many expected a showdown between McCain and popular Democratic Governor Bruce Babbitt. But then Babbitt announced he was running for president instead. The very next day, McCain jumped in the race.
I will be a candidate to serve the people of Arizona in the United States Senate in 1986.
His opponent in the fall was Richard Kimball, an Arizona utility commissioner who had Robert Redford looks and more political experience. In their only debate, Kimball went on the attack.
You come in, you stand on a soapbox to make yourself appear to look taller.
And, showing how times have changed, McCain chastised Kimball for wanting to use American troops.
I would not support and will not support sending U.S. troops to Nicaragua, and I don't think the majority of the American people would support such a thing. And Richard, I think you should rethink your position on a very dangerous and reckless policy of sending young men to fight and die in the jungles of Central America.
Some would argue 20 years later that that's where we're at in Iraq.
Well, it's vastly different, and the Nicaraguans never had any remote possibility of acquiring weapons of mass destruction.
McCain won big on election night.
This is for the seat of the retiring veteran Barry Goldwater. The Republicans hold on to it with a former Navy flyer and former North Vietnamese prisoner of war, Congressman John McCain.
Richard Kimball was a fine man, and he continues to be active in politics, but I had raised more money than him, so obviously I was a special interest candidate.
In the end, McCain replaced Goldwater, the 1964 Republican nominee for president.
Senator Goldwater has a chapter in American political history. I'll be a footnote.
By the time of his appearance at the 1988 GOP convention, everything seemed to be going McCain's way. But then a scandal hit. Charlie Keating was a developer in Arizona who had donated heavily to McCain's campaign and was considered a close friend. Keating would be accused and later found guilty of one of the worst savings and loan scandals in history. For his part, McCain would be accused of stopping a federal investigation into Keating and became a member of the group of senators known as the Keating Five.
Did you have any contact with the regulators?
No.
After months of hearings, McCain would be exonerated, but he would not forget the experience, calling it worse than his 5 years as a POW. Around this time, Cindy McCain would become addicted to prescription drugs. Later, she publicly admitted that she was stealing them from a medical charity that she ran. But even with the controversy, John McCain won re-election in 1992 by a wide margin. And 2 years later, he witnessed the Republican tidal wave that swept the GOP into control of the House for the first time in over 60 years.
I promise you, I will never see anything like this again in my life.
2 years later, McCain was considered for a spot on Bob Dole's ticket, and that led to his own presidential bid in 2000.
It is because I owe America more than she has ever owed me that I am a candidate for President of the United States.
He would face Texas Governor George W. Bush.
If you want to get rid of pork in Washington, stop feeding the hog.
And he would learn the highs and lows of a national campaign. In a stunning victory, McCain would defeat Bush in the New Hampshire primary, but that win would be short-lived. Next came South Carolina and vicious attacks. While Bush addressed Bob Jones University in the upstate, McCain accused members of the religious right of being intolerant. Flyers were left on windshields of churchgoers, accusing McCain of fathering an illegitimate black child who was actually an adopted daughter from Bangladesh. And South Carolinians quickly doubted this maverick from the West.
Someone told me that Senator McCain is a cheat and a liar and a fraud.
What you've just told me has had a very profound effect on me. I hope that people would contact the Bush campaign and tell them not to do that.
In the end, Bush won big.
CNN is prepared to declare a winner. He is Texas Governor George W. Bush.
The South Carolina loss effectively ended McCain's 2000 presidential bid.
I congratulate Governor Bush on his victory here and wish him a happy celebration and a good night's rest. He's going to need it, my friends.
In that defeat, he became something of a popular political celebrity, even being asked to host Saturday Night Live.
Mr. Ashcroft, what plans does the Justice Department have to make our country safer?
We've got some really great stuff in the works. There's one plan that would make the Arabic language or anything that sounds like it illegal.
The door was open, Angel. Shall I loofah your back?
It had also been discovered during his presidential run that McCain had malignant melanoma. A 9-hour operation would result in a permanent scar on the left side of his face.
Health, how do you feel?
Great. I hiked the Grand Canyon with my son at the Naval Academy last August. I worked 7 days a week, 12, 16 hours a day.
McCain now uses sunscreen each day and wears long sleeves and a hat while in the sun. The terrorist attacks on America on September 11, 2001 did a lot to heal wounds between McCain and Bush. Just 2 weeks after 9/11, McCain joined with voices in the administration, beginning to lay the groundwork for a connection between Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein.
Well, we know Osama bin Laden and his network are responsible. The question is, did anybody else help him, such as the Iraqis? There's allegations that they gave assistance.
No link between bin Laden and Saddam has ever been proven, but McCain strongly supported the military attack on Iraq, while at the same time condemning President Bush's defense secretary for mishandling the war.
We had a terrible, flawed strategy that caused us a great sacrifice of American blood and treasure, and we are where we are, though, and now I think we can succeed.
As Election Day approaches, one little-known fact is that McCain has 2 sons currently serving in the military, a long-time tradition that some may have come to expect from the McCain family.
When Road to the White House, the choice continues. A look at the life of Senator Barack Obama.